Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through Thematic Games Part 2, Revenge of the Euro. That's right folks, I am not done. Last week I did a top 10 countdown video for my top 10 and my wife's top 10 favorite Ameritrash style games, i.e. thematically strong games that are of the Ameritrash ilk. Now, actually before I go any farther, since a lot of people brought this up after I did the video last year, I know a lot of people out there are very, very literally offended by the term Ameritrash. And all I can say is, look, I'm sorry, I didn't create the term. It is a widely accepted term for this style of game. And if you really want to take it up with the purveyors of board game pop culture, I would suggest going to Fortress Ameritrash. That's www.fortressat.com. It's a very, very popular site all about Ameritrash style games, and if you can convince them to change their name to something else, then maybe you'll be able to start working on getting Ameritrash style games rebranded as several really cool Ameri style games, Ameri type, just Ameros, the whole Euro versus Amero. There are a lot of different ways you could go, but until the tide turns right now, for the most part, most people are still very, very happy with them called Ameritrash games. So I'm sorry, that was just like a quick follow-up to the video I did last week, because I know a lot of people were very, very upset and thought I was being very, very derogatory and insulting. But I promise you, nothing could have been further from the truth. I have no problem with the ideas of Ameritrash and what they do very, very well. The drama and the excitement that is inherent with them. They're not generally Jensen my type of game, but I think they're great if that's what you like. And okay, but enough about that. Let's move forward, because another thing that came up quite a bit after I did that video was, but Rich, you and Jen, you're our go-to for Euro style games. We wanted to see a top 10 list of thematic Euros. And I thought after that, that makes sense. That's actually a really good idea. And in fact, I did actually put one on Reddit and everybody liked it there. So I figured, what the heck, let's go on ahead and make it official. And I'm gonna do a follow-up part 2, where Thematic Games Part 1 was all about the Ameritrash side of the scale. Now we will be on the the Eurotrash style of the game, the dry cube pusher side, the Eurobores, whatever you want to call it. I'll be equally insulting to these games right here. Boring, dry Euros, blah, blah, blah. But still, these are my favorite highly thematic Euros. Now, and I guess I should say a little bit more before I go on, because, for my money, Euros are implicitly, unless it's a straight up abstract, they are generally fairly thematic as well. Agricola is a very, very thematic game, but I think actually for a lot of people, one of the big barriers to entry is a Euro that doesn't give them any sense that they are in that world. Because a lot of Euros, you're not a mover and a shaker in the world. You're kind of some kind of, on-high administrator who just oversees all the machinations of a bunch of people that are on the ground. I mean, you're not actually there yourself. You're just giving orders from afar. And I know that can be very, very difficult to put yourself into that world. And if being a highly thematic game is all about, kind of creating this fantasy that you can project yourself into, then that's a problem for a lot of Euros. And actually, when I was doing this list, one of the things I noticed is several of the games I'm about to count down are worker placement games. I think that's actually maybe one of the reasons that worker placement has gone from zero to hero, has become such a ridiculously popular form of board game, a board game genre. It's just exploded to be maybe arguably the most popular Euro mechanism there is. And I think maybe a reason for that is because when you have workers that you're placing in the world, you do feel then like you have that real concrete connection. Okay, this is me, or I represent a group of workers or an individual worker, and I am there in the world in the same way that I feel like I am there in in Arkham Horror, or just pick any Ameritrash game you want. You really do feel like you're projected into the world. With a worker placement game, you feel that way too. So actually, it's interesting. A lot of these are worker placement games, and I think that might be some small explanation, because I think Euro or worker placement is a style of Euro gameplay that a Ameritrasher player can more easily project themselves into, and I think that's great. I mean, I'm just hypothesizing. Somebody, if you think I'm crazy, let me know. But anyway, One thing I should say though, I mentioned Agricola, which is a very, very thematic game. It's not going to be on this list because in making this list, I was not just coming up with my 10 favorite games that happen to be thematic, because that would have been a pretty boring, that would have been practically the same thing as my top 10 list of all time, because I think all games are thematic. These 10 are Euros that go above and beyond, and really pour theme into every nook and cranny. Every mechanism of these games is really derived from and explained by the theme. And you could argue, I know some people argue that that's not the case for Agricola because, hey, it makes no sense that if somebody else went to the baby hut that we can't have a baby. Now that makes perfect sense because that's not a baby hut, that's a midwife, and only one person in a season can hire the midwife. That makes sense, but even still, Agricola has weird stuff like infinite livestock inside of a pen and weird little rules that just don't hold up to scrutiny. So I think, and some might disagree with these, all 10 of these achieve a few things in being the most thematic, or at least my favorite, hyper-thematic Euros, that they really do let you feel like you're connected. You can project yourself into that world, and the rules and the theme are really in lockstep. There aren't any little, well, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. But I don't really see how, well, I just go with it anyway, because it makes the game more fun. All of these games, again, lockstep, theme and gameplay. So, enough about the preamble. Let's actually start walking down this list of 10, starting with number 10, Vinhos. Now, this is a very, I should say, by the way, I have done a run through for every single one of these videos. So the links to all of them will be at the end of the video if you want to go and learn more about any of them. So anyway, back to Vinhos. A very heavy, very complex Euro-style business simulation where you are trying to run a very, very successful vineyard. And this game just models, well, I can't say for certain, but it certainly feels like it models everything you have to deal with when trying to run a successful vineyard. From dealing with a bank and taking loans and paying off your loans to, competing in wine fairs and trying to influence, very, very big people in the wine world and getting them on your side so that other people will think your stuff is great, to actually building up your vineyards themselves and aging the wine properly. And it's a really complex game. There's 1.5 million moving parts in this game. Very, very, actually it almost feels kind of Ameritrashy because it takes a long time to play and there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of stuff going on. But at its heart, this is a cube pusher. But it's one where all of the rules and everything in this simulation is not there for the purposes of, well, let's just make it because it'll be fun. It's there because this is the way it would work in real life, and that makes it a very, very strongly thematic Euro. My number 10, Vinhos. Moving on to number 9, Yedo, which is a worker placement game. As I mentioned, there'll be quite a few of these, set in ancient Japan in the city of Yedo, which ultimately went on to become Tokyo. So it's like ancient Tokyo. And this is a worker placement game where players are actually engaging in all sorts of intrigues. The best way to describe this, if you're at all familiar with Lords of Waterdeep, this is a much more heavy and rich and complex version of Lords of Waterdeep, because while you're playing, there's at any given time several different missions you are trying to achieve. Some of them aren't too bad. Some of them are really quite nasty, like kidnap the princess and stuff like that. But to achieve these missions, you don't just collect a bunch of cubes and then turn in cubes to do stuff. You actually, all the worker placement spots in the city have real solid, meaningful locations that make thematic sense for what you do. And you're not just collecting bland resources. You are actually, if there is, if you go on the mission to kidnap somebody, you have to get the grappling hook so that you can break into their place, and you have to get the chloroform to knock them out. You have to get all these very, very specific items. I don't remember the exact items, but stuff like that. You have to get all the specific items to be able to do these particular missions and then launch them. And then another thing that's really, really nice, in a lot of games where you collect resources, you then use those resources, you turn them in, and you complete something to score points. And it's always, pretty straightforward. One of the things I love about this game is, once I complete the mission with all these resources I've collected, I've still got the resources. Why did my samurai sword suddenly disappear because we, assaulted some fortress or something like that? I've still got my swords. Why would I not have them anymore? I love the notion that this game introduces permanence to resources, and the more resources I get, the more resources I have on hand, that then starts to define the types of missions I want to take. And that feels so much more real than your typical Euro-style cube pusher, where the cubes just have some kind of tenuous relationship to some particular item in the real world, and it's easy come, easy go. Not so in Yedo. Now, Yedo has a lot of other cool stuff too. It's got some neat auctioning going on. It has player trade, which is really important because in a game where you don't lose your resources, but you eventually get to a point where, wow, I just don't need all of these, I don't need all this particular item anymore. You can trade them with other players, Settlers of Catan style. And I think that's really brilliant too. A lot of really, really cool stuff going on in Yedo. Now, I should warn you, in case you do seek this out, when the rules warn you about I think they're called the samurai, the high difficulty event cards you can put in this game, and the rules warn you, hey, don't use these, they're really, really rough. Don't use them. They're really, really rough. This game can really beat players up and smack them down if you play with the hard cards. The rules actively recommend you don't do it until you're comfortable with the game. Jen and I, we just don't do it at all because we enjoy the game just fine without. But anyway, that was number 9. Yedo. On to number 8. Oh, this is a lovely little game. Very, very light, simple game that takes Yahtzee mechanisms and does something cool and interesting with it. Kind of a set collection card game meshed with Yahtzee. It's definitely a Euro, but it's hugely thematic. This game tells wonderful stories. CV. This is a game that it's the story of life. Basically, over the course of this game, you are rolling dice, Yahtzee style. You roll some, you set some aside, you roll the remainder, you set some aside, you roll a final time, and then you're locked in. This is what you got. That standard, a lot of games use that mechanism. But the things you're rolling are happiness and health and friendship and all these pillars of what makes a wonderful life, for lack of a better term. And you use these icons you roll to buy certain life events. And the game takes place all the way from childhood, where you determine what starter cards you have that give you benefits throughout the game based on the events of your childhood, through young adulthood, through middle age, and all the way into your golden years. And what's amazing is, every step of the way, what you're trying to do is, when cards come out, these become opportunities that you could pursue in your life. But you know what? You missed out on getting, what's this right here? You missed out on doing your studies when you were in college because that particular turn, you happened to roll some misfortune dice. So some misfortune, and you missed out on the card you really, really wanted to get. But if you had done those studies later in life, those would have helped you achieve something really, really great. This game, it's just... it's amazing. It's touching because at the end, you have all your cards laid out, and your final score that you score in this game, whoever wins is the person who gets the most points. The person who gets the most points is the person who lived the happiest, most well-rounded, fullest, and richest life. Now, if that's not a theme you don't want to immerse yourself in, I don't know what is, because, Jen and I, we love this game. It is so sweethearted, so charming, and so evocative. So many interesting stories just naturally develop out of when you have children. And did you have to lose your job to have those kids? But then, the kids, they brought you so much happiness, but they meant you had to pay a lot more money, and you had to get a better job, or, so many cool things. And my understanding is they are actually working on an expansion for this now. I heard that the other day, and I am so excited. I cannot wait for more cards, more life events in our number 8, Yedo. Let's see. And where is it? Somebody told me I should keep there it is, yeah. So that was number 8. Or I'm sorry, CV. Number 7. This is a really interesting game, probably fairly different from all the other ones on this list, but still very, very cool. Came out last year. Lewis and Clark. Now, this is a race game that does a lot of really, of course, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. The board, the components, everything about it is gorgeous. And the reason I think this makes it I label this as a highly thematic game. Well, there's a few reasons. One of the most impressive things is, I forget how many cards are there. There are 84 historical person cards, and they are all based on real people from that time frame, who were, alive and active in the time of Lewis and Clark, exploring the frontier. And every single one of those 84 cards, which get, they give you special abilities and stuff like that, they are all based on the real world people. The abilities and advantages they give you would be abilities and advantages you have if you were really running your own exploration party through the Americas, and you had those people on your team. Just that is so brilliant that the designers took the time. And in fact, the manual has a whole section at the end devoted to a little bit of information about who each one of these people is. And so I love that the designers took the time and actually made the real theme of history come alive, and these people give you the abilities that they would have in real life. That's awesome, just right there. But then on top of that, the game itself is hugely thematic. It is a race game where we are trying to be the first to make it to the Pacific Ocean. And along the way, we'll get all these heroic personages. They will join us. Sometimes they will leave us. And we'll spend a lot of time actually working with the Native Americans as well, the indigenous population, who can give us all kinds of access that we wouldn't be able to get on our own. So if we work well with them and work in peace and harmony, there's just so much that's really, really wonderful about this game. It's hugely thematic. All the choices you make in this game feel driven by the kinds of issues you would have. You are, for the most part, trying to travel down this river, and you have a certain number of boats, and the more people you have following you, the less space you have on your boats for goods that you're trying to carry. The more goods you have, the less space, but you can get more boats that will slow you down. The bigger your party becomes, the slower you go, but the more stuff you have on hand to deal with unforeseen eventualities. It's a very, very cool game, very, very fun. Fast. Some people do have a problem with analysis paralysis because it's a very, very deep game. There is a lot to think about, but a wonderful thematic experience. Really makes history come alive. Really, it's a shame it's not a little bit lighter. It'd be great if there were a lighter version of this game, because I could see this easily being in classrooms for younger kids, and it would really help capture the essence of the American frontier and that pioneer spirit and all that. But anyway, it's still wonderful, wonderful game is Lewis and Clark. Now on to number 6. This is the second business simulation. It's another worker placement game as well. And again, these are both things that work really, really well together to have a strong theme that makes you feel like, to me, that's the most important thing a theme has to do. I don't really care if I'm in the world. Often I don't even care what the theme is, but the theme has to make me feel like the choices I make in the game are the choices I would make if I was in that position in the real world, or in the fantasy world, or whatever it might be. And this one certainly does that. Pret Porter, which casts you in the shoes of a high, a top-notch fashion designer. That's what you're doing in this game. You are trying to run your own fashion, a clothing firm, trying to design the latest hot, working towards whatever the trends are. Because at any given time, there's current trends that the public and the market really wants. So you're trying to design your dresses and your outfits and all that stuff with particular trends in mind. You're always working towards over the course of the game, there are 4 big fashion shows, and the game plays out over 12 rounds. Each round is a month. And during the first 2 months of a quarter, you spend all your time gathering resources, getting local materials, or paying through the nose to get really much more exotic stuff from foreign markets that will increase the overall quality of your stuff. Trying to get the right designs at the right time, because at the end of a quarter there's going to be a fashion show, and you have some idea based on kind of random that in this particular quarter at this particular fashion show, this is going to be the thing that wins you the show. And so you spend all your time trying to do well at these shows. But then once you've done well and you take the ribbon or the prize or whatever it is at these shows, you can then turn that into prestige that lets you sell in the market for much higher rates, which gets you more money, and you need that money because while you're doing all the creative, this game does a brilliant job of representing the two halves of a creative business. The creative side having to meet market needs but still put yourself into it, and make something that you're proud and passionate of, but then also the other half of just running a successful business, paying the bills, making sure your employees get their salaries on time so that they don't quit. Because the other half of this game is all about putting into upgrades into your building, hiring specific people that can give you accountants and models and your own local in-house PR staff. Or if you don't get your own PR staff, you can hire externally. You can go out and hire somebody else that will give you bonuses in a different way. It's cheaper, but it doesn't last as long as building up your own PR staff. Brilliant game, a lot going on, wonderful theme, very, very evocative, and really puts you in this world, and that's why it is my number 6, Pret Porter. On to number 5. This is another worker placement, although some people would argue this is not a worker placement, but if you saw my worker placement top 10, you'll know I think it is, but I'm not going to argue about what is or isn't. If you don't think it's worker placement, fine. It doesn't change the fact that this is still a hugely thematic Euro Myrmes, which is a game all about running your own successful ant colony. In this game, for all intents and purposes, you are the queen ant. And, basically, although actually most of your decision making comes to, what do you call the nurses? The female ants who get all the work done inside the colony, who are rearing the young, who are digging out and expanding the colony, who are going out and scouting out. But you don't just have those ants. You can also spend time growing your own army ants that actually go out into the world. And you start, a big part of this game is above ground, where you are engaged effectively in kind of an area control thing. But the area control is not just putting, a lot of times area control is, I just put a cube in that particular quadrant and that represents vaguely some of my forces and therefore I'm in control of that zone. This one makes area control much more rich and thematic because the way you gain control is through pheromone trails. Because again, that's true to the theme of ants and how you create these trails. I don't know if you can see any on this picture. No, you can't really. But again, you can watch my run through if you want to see more. You create these trails of pheromone that basically label given areas as belonging to you. And those pheromone trails let your workers travel much, much quicker and harvest all the resources from up above and then bring them back down below. And you need them down below so that you can make your colony thrive. You get a whole bunch of different objectives you can try to shoot for. This game is also very, very brutal because it plays out, again, over a year. It's another thing that's really, really nice. I so often, it's just a huge mistake that Euro designers make. They just say, well, the game takes place over 7 rounds, and each round has 3 turns, and that's it. It's like, don't do that. Don't tell me it takes 7 rounds. Tell me it takes 7 months. Tell me it takes 7 decades. Start to, even in the rules, create something that allows me to contextualize what's going on, that allows me to put myself into the world. 7 rounds means nothing. 7 weeks, that means something. And so the beauty about this game plays out over 4 seasons. And the seasons are tied to the real ones. There's summer, spring, autumn, and fall. Or spring, summer, autumn, and fall. Or winter. And, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And, the game is all the way through building up for the big final season, winter, which is just going to kill you. Everything about this game is about preparing and getting ready so that you can survive the winter at the end of the game. That is hugely thematic. That is so much more thematic than, we'll just play through 4 rounds. Game designers out there, take a hint from Pret, take a hint from Myrmes. Make the structures of your Euro games tie into real world structures and players will find it a more thematic experience and they will like it more and they will tell their friends to buy it and so on. Anyway, that was number 5, Myrmes. On to number 4. Now it's interesting, this game, I did talk about this one a little bit when I did my other thematic, the Ameritrash thematic, because on the surface, I could not blame you for mistaking Legends of Andor as a full-on Ameritrash style game. This has got everything. This has got a huge, expansive board with beautiful components. Granted, it doesn't have minis, but it has these little standees that are gorgeous. They are almost as good as minis. It has a lot of dice rolling to attack the monsters, and it has a lot of dice rolling to protect yourself from the attacks. It has big epic quests. It has stories that the game tells you. It does all this Ameritrash stuff. But why do I call it a Euro? because this is a Euro in Ameritrash clothing. Because, even though the actions you're doing are Ameritrashy, are, that kind of Descent style, that Arkham Horror style gameplay experience, the overall structure of this game turns, every time you play this game, into a rich and elaborate puzzle to solve. This game becomes less about just, going through the grinding, leveling up, getting lots of loot, and then just killing tougher and tougher monsters, and doing that standard epic power fantasy thing, like say Talisman. And in fact, actually, a lot of people come to this game, because it looks like an Ameritrash game. It looks like the type of game they'll love. But then when they play it, they find out, oh my gosh, I don't like this game at all. Because the core thing that turns this from Ameritrash into elegant, puzzly Euro is the fact that every time you fight one of these bad guys out on the board, and you have to fight them, you have to pay attention to them because they are constantly advancing towards the castle. And if enough of them hit the castle, you lose. The castle's overrun and everybody loses. So you have to fight them. You always have to be aware. But every time you fight one of them, you move up on the timer. You run out of time. So you have to be very, very cautious, very careful, and very smart about when and where you fight. You have to pick your battles. You can't just fight every single monster. You can only fight a select few. And a big part of victory in this game is knowing when to fight and knowing when to let it go. Because if you fight everybody, guaranteed you'll lose. And there's a bunch of other stuff too. I've done a run through for this. I think this is like the third top 10 I've mentioned Andor in because it's so gorgeous, it's so wonderful. So I won't belabor it too terribly much more, other than to say this is great. I mean, if you, like me and Jen, are someone who thinks, why can't I bring myself to enjoy Descent? Why does Mice and Mystics, while it's beautiful and gorgeous, why does it just feel hollow? Why does it just feel like nothing more than just, a dice marathon? You might want to check this out, because this is the game for the Euro fan who loves Lord of the Rings, who loves epic fantasy, but also loves a really good puzzle to solve. That's number 4, Legends of Andor. On to number 3, another worker placement game, although again, some people might argue it's not, but we can have that discussion another day. You can go, because I mentioned this in my top 10 worker placement games too, and some people say it's not a worker placement game, but oh, it so definitely is. Fresco. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful, wonderful game. Now, in this game, we are Renaissance era artists working on the gigantic, magnificent fresco on the ceiling of some cathedral somewhere. We've been hired by the bishop, and we are all working on it kind of in competition, because the cathedral itself, as you can see, is a whole bunch of tiles, and whenever we paint one of these, we take the tile away and we reveal some of the fresco and we score points. And meanwhile, the bishop himself is walking around, and if you can ever work on an area that he sees you, if you get him to move over to where you are and then do stuff, you'll score extra points because the bishop is really happy about what you're doing. And when you're not working on the fresco, the thing that makes this game so rich and so thematic and really lets you put yourself in it is you really do live the day-to-day life of a Renaissance-era master painter, a Leonardo or a Michelangelo type character. I mean, what other game do you actually make decisions for your character of when to get out of bed in the morning? And that has a huge implication. If you get up really early, that means you can get to the market really quick, right when it opens, and you have the best selection of paints, so you have a better choice of what you're going to work on on the fresco. But if you sleep in, sure, you'll get to the market last, you'll get to everything last, you'll always get last dibs on everything, but you will be much happier and you will be able to work much better and more efficiently because you got a good night's sleep and aren't pushing yourself to the frazzled end. But you know what, if you do push yourself really hard, you can always let some steam off at the end of the day by going to the theater. There's so many of these wonderful thematic elements that I can't think of another worker placement-y, let's say worker placement-y style game that truly captures the feel of day-to-day life of a truly extraordinary person that you get to be. And then on top of that, it's a gorgeous game. It's a great gateway because it comes with variable levels of difficulty. You can turn on and off different modules to make the game much more complex, like it's like for a full-on Euro fan, or you can turn those modules off. So this is a great gateway. You could play with family members, with anybody who might be interested in the subject matter, and what a lovely subject matter it is, Fresco. Okay, on to number 2. Now this is kind of an odd one, and I kind of went back and forth on this one for a while, but ultimately I decided to go with number 2, Forbidden Desert. And you might think to yourself, well, forget about Forbidden Island. That's just, for Gens of My Money, it's just not a particularly interesting game. It's just way too simple. But I had a tough choice deciding between Forbidden Desert and Pandemic, which is kind of like Forbidden Desert's big brother of a game. And at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, we definitely like Pandemic more, but I do think Forbidden Desert creates a more rich and engrossing and complete thematic experience. Because, Pandemic does a lot of the right stuff. You are a little character moving around the world. You really do feel like you're having to deal with all these hotspots. It is a very thematic, evocative game. But there are still some weirdnesses, most notably with the city cards. Because it's a brilliant gameplay mechanism that you use these city cards for radically different things. And you have very strict restrictions about how you can share city cards with other people. And while all those rules make Pandemic a wonderful gameplay experience, so exciting, it also kind of robs it of some of its thematic consistency. Forbidden Desert, on the other hand, doesn't really suffer from those problems. Now it's kind of an odd theme because you're searching for kind of like the desert equivalent of Atlantis, this lost city under the dunes that is known for its wonderful, long forgotten, high-tech technology, and you're searching around in a desert trying to find it. And you're doing that while a desert storm is going on that's constantly piling more and more sand off on all these spaces, and you're desperately trying to basically dig through the sand and find the evidence of this lost civilization, because if you don't, you'll die. You'll die of thirst out in the desert. So it's a desperate fight for survival. And while I guess you could say that the theme is a little bit of a stretch too, because what does it really mean? We're really digging hundreds of thousands, we're digging away tons of sand every time we remove one of those. I don't really tend to think of it as that. I think the theme does hold up because it's not like you're really getting rid of the sand. You're just digging through it to see what you can find. And the higher sand dunes just mean it's a tough area to get through and stuff like that. The thing is though, this game, more so than Pandemic, has such an immediate and visceral, grab you by the gut sense of tension, because I think more than anything else, the threat of this game is dying of thirst. Because everybody has their water meter, and the more they travel around and the more they try to find this lost city and the more they try to stay one step ahead of the constantly shifting sands of this sandstorm, the more water you run out of. And if you ever run out of water, you die. And obviously you die if you fail in a lot of games out there, but there's something about Forbidden Desert that just it just grabs you. You really do get that sense of tension much more so. Pandemic, on the other hand, it's a worldwide calamity, and I can appreciate it, but I kind of appreciate it from it's not intimate. This is me. I can picture myself desperate, sweating out of every pore, every last bit of moisture I have, every last drop out of my canteen, being the difference between life and death, sharing that water with somebody else, even though I desperately need it because they're worse off than me, and just hoping against hope in that desperate race to find safety really just wraps you up in such. But at the same time, this is a Euro through and through. This is not about dice rolling. This is not about big epic. This is a fast game that plays really quick. It's very, very elegant. It is all about solving effectively a gigantic slider puzzle, because your entire board is a slider puzzle where all these things are moving around and you're constantly trying to figure out where they're going to be. It's a brilliant game. Absolutely love it. But it's not number one. Number two was Forbidden Desert, and number one should come as no surprise to many of you. Dungeon Petz. Oh yes, once more, the final worker placement game on this top 10 thematic Euro countdown. This is an incredible game. I have spit rhymes about this so much for so long. I just don't know if I'm going to repeat myself again. In a nutshell, you are a family, a little entrepreneurial family of imps running a business that raises dungeon pets, baby dragons and golems and dire bunnies and all kinds of ghosts and yetis and all sorts of things. And you raise these up from babies, and you try to keep them happy and healthy. You feed them, you play with them, you clean up after them, you care for them when they're sick, all this stuff to try and ensure they grow up nice and healthy and strong so that you can sell them to dungeon lords who will take them off to their dungeons and they'll live happily ever after. It's a It's much like Pret and Vinhos, it is a very, very challenging business simulation because there's a lot of stuff you have to, a lot of plates that you're spinning. You got a lot of balls in the air, whatever it is in the air, plates in the air. That definitely goes on with this as you're trying to expand your business, have more pens so you can grow more pets. The more pets you have, the more you have to spend time taking care of them, but that means less time you can actually get more cool, like neat artifacts and whatnot. But what really sells the theme is these little pets, they come alive. They become real interesting characters because they're kind of predictable. You kind of know what they want, but they can still surprise you. You might think they're just going to want to be fed, but then they end up being a little bit depressed and they're kind of sad. And then you're like, oh, I should have played with him instead of feeding him because he doesn't even want food. Oh, you little rascal, you. It's a wonderful game, hugely thematic, great Euro too, gives you a lot to think about. And there you go, folks, my top 10 thematic Euros. Again, my favorite, highly thematic games. I would argue tooth and nail that the vast majority of these Euros on my wall are very, very thematic. I would happily have a showdown with Tom Vassell about the thematic merits of Hawaii any day of the week. But even still, these are the 10 that push theme better and stronger than all the rest. And that's it, folks. And I hope you enjoyed this. Again, final apologies for the constant use of Ameritrash to people who find that, and believe me, as soon as it is no longer the de facto term that is used throughout the industry, I'll stop using it too. Like I said, go to Fortress Ameritrash, start your campaign there, get the term changed, and save the world. But in the meantime, I'll be enjoying these wonderful thematic Euros, and I think I'm going to stop right there. Thank you guys all for watching. Talk to you later. Have a very nice day.